So this video is on the smoking at Oxfordshire. Now, Oxfordshire have decided to ban smoking outdoors in a step to become first free county in England. Well, I've got a couple of things to say about that. So everyone thinks that smoking is bad because it goes into your lungs and causes cancer. But does anyone know the history? Does anyone know the background? Does anyone know about the plant, nicotine? Because it's not quite what you think it is. Tobacco is a sacred plant. There are sort of like four sacred plants if you want. It's a cacao, coca, or cacao is the chocolate, coca, which is where the cocaine comes from, nicotine, and ayahuasca. Those are sort of like four plants that indigenous people say are the oldest in the world. Tobacco is related to the deadly nightshade family. Now that has a plant called daturum or borrachelo in Spanish, and that is considered a very sacred plant and one of the plant's teachers, a bit like ayahuasca. And those plants are healing plants. They have multiple uses. The nicotine plant, it has always been smoked, but it has also had different types of ways of ingesting it into the system. And when the guys out here smoke it, they smoke it as a, well, usually they smoke it as a cigar. They don't usually smoke it as a cigarette, and they don't usually inhale it into their lungs. And the plant, the tobacco, is not for really relaxation and vice, which is what it's become, is a plant where you can connect to nature and you can get information and you can do healing. So it has magical properties attached to it, and it has shamanism attached to it. Now, just because you may be a Christian and it's got shamanism attached to the plant doesn't mean that the plant's bad. I understand that a lot of people out there feel that shamanism is evil and bad, but you can't fault a plant because it's connected to shamanism. Now, when these plants are taken, you need to have permission to take the plants. What does that mean? It means respect. It means understanding what the plants are and what they're about. When you go to somebody and you ask for something, you need to introduce yourself, and they usually need to know who you are, and you need to have some sort of relationship before a circle of energy is passed between both of you. You ask for something, he gives it to you, you pay. So there's this circle of giving and receiving. When you go to the plant and you buy the cigarettes, you see it as an object, you don't see it as a plant. And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to look at tobacco not through the eyes of a Western person, but look at tobacco through the eyes of a shamanistic perspective to see different ways that you can look at the world. You can't just base the world on a Christian perspective. The world is a Western world. The Western world has grown up on Christianity. Christianity has its own biases and views and ethics. And many of the laws that we have in the West have grown out of Christianity, and those laws have become international laws. And through capitalism, the whole world has taken on the Western ideals. But those Western ideals are heavily based on Christianism. Even though the Christianity can't be seen, it still influences the cosmovision, the perspective of the world in general through the Western culture, because the Western culture is dominant. Now, if you ask someone where tobacco comes from, would they be able to tell you? Well, tobacco is thought to have come from South America. South America has many other very important plant teacher plants. Those are plants that when you ingest, they give you, for instance, ideas or visions. They clean you out. They take cancers out of you. They take infirmities out of you or illnesses out of you. And they sort of guide you. They create a connection between you and nature so that you're more in harmony. The problem with technology coming into the world is that the technology, we don't seem to understand what it is, nor pay too much respect to it. We use technology to kill people, and we use technology to make lots of money. It facilitates our lives, it cures people, but we haven't managed to get the technology out of the technicum, which is a world that it probably lives in. If technology is an extension of the ideas of humans, those ideas come from the mental plane. So maybe technology or the technicum comes from the mental plane. Whatever it is that we're not using technology particularly well, and most of the technology that we use it to kill other people, or we use it to dominate and control. The amount of technological advancements that are coming, that have gone through the military, is not something to be proud of. And if those military inventions are then seeping in to the general public, that means that those inventions and that technology have come from an impetus or a deontological place, which is based on control, hurting, killing, which is basically what the military has done. this technology hasn't been built from a heart orientated place, which is to better serve humanity. We might think that the technology of control and killing serves humanity, but it only serves the nation which has controlled the technology and which dominates it, and the other nations which suffer as a result would not see the technology in the same light as the host country that made it. Now, when the conquistadors arrived to South America, the conquistadors took tobacco back to Europe. When they arrived here, they imported Christianity as well. And that Christianity sought to try to put a wedge in between the indigenous people and the plants. Those plants were what connected the indigenous people to nature, what made them be in harmony with nature. Now, there is this archetypal idea, this romanticism, that all indigenous people were a bit like Adam and Eve and walked around naked and ate from flowers and lived in peace and harmony. That's a bit far from the truth. There was cannibalism, there was like slavery, there's killing, there's infanticide, there's all sorts of things that have gone on. But generally, if you want to blame the human race for killing, you can't really blame technology. You're going to have to blame the ideas inside man's head and technology as an amplification for carrying out larger scale destruction based on the thoughts and the ideas that man has. Just those ideas are being amplified through the technology. Anyway, that's a bit of a side point. So the conquistadors, they came, and with the Christianity demonized the plants. For instance, datura or borrachello was called devil's trumpet or deadly nightshade. You know, those aren't names which you perhaps give to a plant that was a teacher and that was helping someone, but you might give it to something which you felt threatened by. And in Latin America, the Christians found trying to put religion onto the people that drank plant medicines one of the hardest things to do, because the plants having that connection to humans reorientated them, and it was very hard for the Christians to get those people to believe in those gods when they had direct connection to the gods of the forests that they believed in, and those gods they could see through the help of the visionary plants. What happened was, with the plant medicine, it had to go underground, and a lot of the iconography or the symbols from Christianity were sort of borrowed. So the Virgin Mary became Mama Pacha, and then you could have God, which would become its understanding of the completeness of the world. And then, saints could become sort of powerful entities that could help, sort of replacing, for instance, animals or jaguars or anacondas. But I mean, saints, Jesus never gave anyone permission to have a saint, but yet the Catholic Church introduced saints. So, one of the problems with the Catholic Church that the Protestants didn't like were the introduction of saints into the church, that you were sort of trying to praise these people when people shouldn't perhaps be praised. And who's to make a saint a saint? Well, it's only by discretion, but a lot of the time perhaps people have paid money, or it's a part of a propaganda in order to make people saints that shouldn't actually be saints. For instance, Mother Teresa is being made a saint, but she has a lot of issues behind her name. For instance, child cruelty and withholding medicines and painkillers from people, because she felt that when people died, sometimes perhaps it was good that they suffered just like Jesus did on the cross. So there's this sort of like narcissism with Christianity that people can believe in, and this savior complex that they think that they should put onto other people. But these plants that they're trying to destroy, or they were trying to destroy the relation between humans and plants, it was started by the Christians, but now it's gone to technology. And so perhaps technology is on part of the main agenda as religions, in that technology is trying to take humans away from plants as well. It's trying to disrupt the relationship, especially if you have technology which interferes with the GMO or the DNA of the plant in order for it to grow in a certain way. Or if you hybridize it or you clone it, you're interfering with the genetics of the plant, and then you interfere with the genetics of humans. For instance, with new liquids that you pump into their arms with CRISPR-Cas9 technology, and you might find that the relationship between humans and plants, which was natural and symbiotic because plants actually created humans. If you look at nature, humans can't exist without plants. It's plants that gave humans everything. It's plants that gave us our energy. Coal, comes from plants, gives us our food, gives us the fire to make things, gives us the fire to make technology, minerals. All of these things come from the world. And so we're dependent on the plant kingdom and the mineral kingdom. The plant kingdom is also, in magical terms, seen to be a higher kingdom than the human kingdom. So Kevin Kelly put forward the idea that technology is part of the seventh kingdom, and each kingdom gives birth to the following kingdom. Anyway, pushing that aside, if part of the agenda is to try to separate humans from plants, because that way, by isolating the human, you can atomize them and you can then attack their identity, which is happening at school through sexual confusion, you can then push that person into transhumanism and posthumanism. It's far more easy. But if those people have got a relationship with plants and plants orientate, then you do not want that, because the orientation of the plants is not to go down the post-human road in the way that we're going, perhaps in a different way, but definitely not this way. And so plants become an enemy if they're starting to help humans, ceasing to be led down various canals and paths which perhaps have nefarious endings. So there is an attack on plants, as we see, and we can see the attack on marijuana, on the coca plant, on the tobacco plant, which Oxfordshire Council is doing. And I bet Oxfordshire Council doesn't know half the information that I'm giving out, which is quite ironic considering Oxford University is in that council, and Oxford University being a foundation or a source of intelligence and education doesn't seem to have brushed off onto the council members who should know this information. Ceremonies are intrinsically important to humans. I mean, going to church is a ceremony, meditation is a ceremony, smoking tobacco is also a ceremony. Not smoking cigarettes and putting it into your lungs, but putting it into your mouth and blessing the tobacco is one of the oldest ceremonial practices that we have, and it's a shamanistic one which helped man and plant reinforce their synchronicity, because man, human and plant work together. It's being put forward, there's an idea that's being put forward where you have to understand that you can't look at this problem in a physical modern cosmological perspective. I'm looking at this problem in an energetical and shamanistic way, and that means that plants actually have their own consciousness. The problem with humans is that we're very arrogant. We think that consciousness has to be defined on human terms, and intelligence has to as well. But when you look at shamanism, or you look at plants through a shamanistic perspective, you see that plants are actually the higher intelligence, and plants have the ability to do things that humans can, but they do it in a very different way. For instance, plants can migrate. Plants is being put forward, one hypothesis is being put forward, that plants created humans or helped in the human evolution so that plants could be taken off world to different galaxies and planets. They just needed someone to build the technology for them, which was the humans. But we can't see it that way, because we think that humans are the only consciousness in the world. And that type of perspective that we look at the world with has been harbored from the schools and the education system that we've gone through, which completely disjoin nature and science, or nature and or science and mysticism. Mysticism relates to minerals and to plants, because a lot of the practices for mysticism would come from plants, nature and minerals. Mysticism isn't the occult. Mysticism is something which is allowed in Christianity. In fact, Pope John Paul II was thought to be mystical. He was thought to be able to speak in a mystical language. So occultism is a branch, let's say, of mysticism, but then you'd have to define what occultism is. And if you want to define what occultism is, then you'd have to say that a priest or a pastor is also part of that, because they're giving over hidden knowledge. They're interpreting hidden knowledge. The Bible is a source of knowledge, and there is knowledge concealed in those pages, and it takes a seer or someone of ability to explain what those are to the people. And so that knowledge would be hidden knowledge, which is being revealed, and the whole definition of a cult is hidden knowledge. So depending on what you attribute the definition of occultism to would depend on your moral stance towards the word and towards what it could be. But without being too Christian and saying, everything that is a cult is devil worship and bad, try to look at it more from a scientific point of view. When the conquistadors came, they sort of bastardized the plants. Now, they inverted the plants. They inverted tobacco. It became a vice. It started going into your lungs, and they started putting chemicals into it, which started causing cancer. They also bastardized the coca plant by turning it into cocaine. And you might look at it from a different perspective. If you look at this world from a multi-dimensional perspective, if plants have a consciousness and they have a symbiotic relationship with humans, and the plants are teaching the humans to evolve, and then you have conquistadors which come in and destroy that relationship and then bastardize the plants might have helped the bastardization, because those plants in effect went on to destroy large communities in the West, also here as well, but also in the West as well. And so the cocaine plant has destroyed large parts of society, and the nicotine has caused lots of cancer. Now, that might have come from permission. You need to have permission when you smoke the plants. Smoking is about respect. It's about developing a relationship. It's about being prepared. It's about showing that you want to enter into this shamanic journey, if you like. But it can also show, or the plant can also show to the other people, that if you take these plants and you start messing around with the relationships between humans and plants, the plants have the capacity to invert the plants in order to cause problems. So is that a plant converting the plants into something which causes humans harm, or is it humans doing something to humans to cause humans harm? Anyway, some people believe that what's happened with the plants and their bastardization being turned into cocaine and cigarettes is perhaps the plants teaching the conquistadors, or the land of the conquistadors, a lesson, and that land would happen to be Europe. It just seems to have spread now cigarettes to the rest of the world. So what's all this got to do? Well, having as we're moving into the fourth industrial revolution, and we're going into the cyborg human, we're going into the post-human, we're going into the transhuman. That involves putting technology into the human. It means taking the human out of nature and putting him into the technological world. So all things natural have to be taken away from the human. That means food. So for instance, meat is going to be taken away. We're going to start making synthetic meat. We're not going to have big, large cows. We're going to have little nuggets of grasshoppers and ants. So we're going to start changing the protein that we take in, and we're going to start trying to go over to created foods, foods that are made from machines, foods which we're told are good for us, completely disregarding anything to do with biophotons. Biophotons are bits of light, information of light which travel through the universe, that can be imbued into plants, and those plants store those photons inside of them, and then when you eat them you get those biophotons. And though if those biophotons are energies or information from the stars, then you're imbibing your body with information on some level, on a multi-dimensional level, if you want to believe in something like that. So tobacco, if you've got tobacco in your blood which is coming in through the cigarettes, now it's not in the best way going into your body through the cigarettes. It's going in through quite a violent way, a way that causes problems, that causes cancer, that causes illness, whether that's towards the chemicals or that's towards the tobacco or not having permission. But anyway, you get the tobacco into your system. And tobacco, being a teacher, being one of the oldest plants in the world according to indigenous tradition, is not going to be in tandem or working in tandem with technology. And so it seems to me that technology, the new industrial revolution, post-humanism, transhumanism, cyborgism, do not want things like ayahuasca or tobacco in the body. And so this part of cleaning the body or getting rid of tobacco in society is something that's needed in order to help the transition from human to post-human. And we're also seeing an attack on ayahuasca. For instance, people that are bringing ayahuasca to different countries are being put into prison, especially in Spain. Some people from Santo Daime were put into Spain for a couple of years. Also, mambe, which comes from the coca plant, that's been called green cocaine. You've also got mushrooms, which are being made illegal. Marijuana's had a very hard time. And so what you see is that there's an attack. There's a wish that the world that we're going into doesn't have in this world any plant that has an ability to talk or any psychoactive properties that can override the information of the internet and the educational system into a dimension that those systems do not have control over. In order to control the information coming from different worlds into the human through the plant, the only way you can do it is either, I would have thought, to ban the plant or to change the genetic makeup in the plants or in the human so that they are no longer able to speak to each other on the genetic level. Remember, plants have about 40% the same genetic code as humans. If you start playing with the genetics of a human, does that then perhaps mean that it's not possible for the plant to communicate with the human anymore? If you look at Dr. Jeremy Narby's book, The Cosmic Serpent, he goes into DNA and he goes into ayahuasca, how these plants activate DNA and the strands of DNA. So if tobacco, which can be a hallucinogenic plant, it is something which you can, if you want to look at ethnographic studies on tobacco, you can see a series of ethnographic interviews was conducted between 2003 and 2008 with curanderos. Curanderos are healers, they're shamans in Peru, who reported using tobacco in various ways. Tobacco is one of over 50 plants with psychotropic effects used in the region that are considered plants that teach or plant teachers, including cacao, datura, which is deadly nightshade. I'll show you a picture of that. Because they are believed to have an associated guiding spirit or mother who teaches the secrets of traditional medicine. Like other plants that teach, tobacco is one of the cornerstones of learning and practicing the art of shamanism. And according to the curanderos consulted by Joregi et al., it is considered one of the most powerful and oldest of plants. Shamanistic training in Peru involves a period of fasting, isolation, and celibacy, during which period one ingests one or more of the teaching plants on a daily basis. Tobacco in the form of a potent type of Nicotina rustica. Nicotina rustica is one of the strongest. Well, it's the type of tobacco plant which has the highest concentration of nicotine in it. I think it's 10% or 14%. Is always present in their traditional medical practices, and it is used for purification to cleanse the body of negative energies. So if tobacco is a cleaning plant, if tobacco is cleaning the body, it is possible to put tobacco into the body through smoking, which is not good, but you still have the nicotine in your body. And if the nicotine cleans the body, then it's getting rid of things which shouldn't be there. And if we're going into the nanobot age, if we're going into the vaccine age, remember COVID, VACCINE, which you're not allowed to say on YouTube. Nicotine, or people that smoked through hospital statistics, seem to be getting less COVID than other people. So strangely enough, it seems that smoking was stopping the contraction of COVID-19. That wouldn't stop at just COVID-19. It would also go on to loads of other things as well. As we're going into the new technological world, we're going to get lots of energies coming in. These energies are frequencies to do with telephones, radiations, and these frequencies or energies, they have in their own way, in their own consciousness and intelligence, just in the same way that energies of the spiritual realm have intelligences as well. And so if these intelligences can be malign or malignant, and tobacco has an ability to clean that out, what it could potentially be saying is that the world that we're going into with all these new energies, those energies could be propelled or pushed away by the tobacco on one interdimensional level, if you understand what the interdimensional levels are, because you've been invested in it through shamanism or some other work. Even if you are a religious person, you still have to believe in interdimensional bodies. The Christians in particular seem to have three dimensions. They have heaven, hell, and the physical world. If you're a Catholic, you've got purgatory as well. Now these are different dimensions. All right, those are four dimensions or three dimensions that Christians believe that you can go to. So you have to start understanding the world is an interdimensional place, especially if you look at the world as a simulation theory, or a simulation which was put forward by Nick Bostrom, who's head of future studies at Oxford University. So the way to look at the world and the way to look at these problems, in my view, is not through just a physical Terrian Earth cosmovision. It's got to be looked at through a multi-vision perspective, because if there are outside entities that are conducting nefarious behavior on our plane that we can't see, then having an enemy that you can't see is very dangerous. And perhaps the best way to invade a species or to invade humanity is to actually not be seen, because you can't defend yourself against an enemy if you can't see it. That's all I wanted to say about tobacco. I just wanted to say that, that's all I wanted to say about tobacco. Tobacco is not what you think it is. And Oxfordshire Council is taking up its idea. Oxfordshire Council is taking up its idea to ban smoking outdoors, and that's it. The problem's more complex. You shouldn't be banning plants. You should be educating people. Banning things because people don't have the capacity to stop it themselves is actually quite offensive to humans' intelligences. If you don't want people to smoke, then you need to educate them on what smoking is, what tobacco is, and you need to do it at school. Smoking, putting into your lungs from cigarettes, is not a good thing, but banning smoking completely, which also encapsulates different religions and shamanistic practices, is not good for humanity. Because if humanity, or one of the ways that humanity is going to survive, is by keeping its connection to nature and not keeping its connection to technology, or if it goes with technology, by keeping a connection to the earth, because the earth can imbue the human brain with a harmony, and that harmony can create a harmonious technology which can then help humanity. It's very important to keep these old technologies alive, and one of those is smoking tobacco. One of those is smoking cigars in ritual settings with shamans.